Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everyone, Tracy here from Keto and Crime. Thank you so much to every single one of my patrons and channel members. You make this possible. And you're one of the reasons I do this. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if I haven't said it before, thank you. I'll sing it. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me and letting me geek out, not making fun of me like a lot of other people do, because I like weird stuff about crime and dark history. Thanks, everyone. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Keto and Crime. I am so sorry I've been absent for a week. My day jobs have just really ramped up, and I've been so busy, so I apologize. And I would rather not put out a video than just rush one out and have it be subpar. So I just want to let you know I'm truly sorry. But this week, I'm back with this video. And tomorrow night, I'm having a live stream where we will talk about the new Peacock series, or Peacock NBC series, Where the Truth Lies, with Casey Anthony. They're doing some hardcore simping for Miss Anthony over there at Peacock. So I thought we would just have some fun and discuss that. So that kind of feeds into today's video, which is on the Netflix movie, which I actually watched on Thanksgiving Day with my family. I'm surprised they watched it with me. They're not into the true crime like I am, called The Good Nurse, which is it's a irregular take, and when I say irregular, I don't mean bad take. It was an excellent movie, and I'm going to talk about it. On the life, not really the life, but the capture and conviction of serial killer nurse Charles Cullen. But it comes at it from the perspective of fellow nurse Amy Longren, who is just portrayed excellently in the movie by Miss Chastain. Her perspective of what she saw and how she perceived Mr. Cullen, which honestly was as a friend. They were very good friends. He was very good to her. He did a lot of great things for her, like covering for her at the hospital when she was having some heart issues and she didn't want to let the hospital know it. I mean, all of that stuff really happened. I was really surprised after researching the case how much it actually followed what happened between those two. So it kind of comes at it from her perspective, not his. So you do have a sympathetic view of Cullen, but not really. She knows he's evil. She knows, she comes to realize he's evil. She doesn't want him anywhere around her or her children, and helps authorities, despite all the best efforts of the hospital to prevent this from coming out. She helps arrange for his arrest. And so it's very unique. It comes at it from the point of who I consider a hero. She's a real life person. She's still a nurse. She lives in Florida with her daughters and her grandchildren, and is just a great American hero, in my opinion. But before we jump into the movie, I do want to do a cursory overview of Charles Cullen and his life, and then we'll actually talk about the movie. So let's dive in. Charles Cullen was born February 22nd, 1960 in West Orange, New Jersey. He came from a typical blue-collar, working-class Catholic family. His father, Edmund, was a bus driver. His mother, whose name was Florence, was actually English. She was born in England and immigrated to the United States after World War II, where she married his father. But she was a homemaker. And unfortunately, Charles was only 7 months old when his father, Edmund, died. And so he was left with a single mom and eight children. So he was the youngest of 8 siblings. So According to him, his growing up in West Orange, New Jersey was not the best. He said it was it was just miserable. He did bond with his mom, but his mom was trying to work whatever job she could to support a very large family. And this, was in the 60s and 70s. I was raised by a single mom in the 70s. It wasn't exactly easy for them, and I can only imagine with 8 children. So he was left alone with his older siblings quite a bit. And from his accounts, his older sisters would bring their boyfriends home, and the boyfriends would abuse him and bully him. And a couple of his sisters got pregnant, and it was just, and there would be widespread drug usage in the house while the mom was out trying to earn a living. So, not a very good growing up for him, and he started to exhibit signs of PTSD and other disorders quite early in his life. And then another tragedy, December 6, 1977. Florence, his mom, would pass away after a devastating car accident. And according to Cullen, who was a teenager at the time, he was in fact a junior or senior in high school, not real sure, he was around 16 or 17 at the time of his mom's death. He appeared to have had a very poor run-in with the hospital over his mom's body. Evidently, his siblings weren't much help about anything, and so it all fell on young Charles. And according to him, the hospital, instead of communicating to him what had happened, he had to get to the hospital only to be told his mother had passed. They did not tell him how bad it was over the phone so that he could mentally prepare. But when he got there, she was evidently dead, and he said that the way they treated her body made him cringe. So he had a pretty bad view of the medical profession from that. Now, these are his words. We don't know, but that's what he said. He also said that the hospital was kind of cagey in informing him, possibly because he was only 17, but they cremated her body and basically gave her a pauper's burial because, they were quite poor, instead of returning the body to him. And he said he would never forgive them or live that down. Now, I haven't done any hardcore research into that to say whether that was true or not, but that is what he said. If that did happen, that was bad. That should never have happened. He did eventually drop out of high school within a few months of his mother's death and enlisted in the United States Navy. He ended up serving aboard the submarine, the U.S. Woodrow Wilson. He did pass basic training and all associated psychological examinations for a submarine crew, which were quite intense. He rose to the rank of petty officer, second class, and actually worked on vessels the vessels that contain Poseidon missiles, which were basically high-tech missiles that could shoot down other missiles that were fired from submarines. So he was quite skilled when it comes to logistics and aeronautics and things like that. Though, just like high school and his siblings, he was bullied and hazed relentlessly by other crew members. His commanding officer started to notice that Cullen was getting more and more unhinged. One morning while he was on duty, he was discovered at his control panel wearing medical scrubs, surgical mask, gloves instead of his naval uniform, duty uniform, and never offered any explanation why he was dressed like that. And so as a result of this and some other instances, he was disciplined and reassigned to a lower pressure job aboard a supply ship known as the USS Canopus. While on board ship, he did attempt what would be known as a second suicide attempt. The first was at age 9. Reportedly, he had attempted to commit suicide. So a very, very disturbed young man. And he was committed to the Navy psychiatric ward several times over the remainder of his enlistment, and he was finally discharged medically, but with honors, in 1984, though they kind of sealed the records and did not give an exact reason why he was discharged. For some reason, even though he had a bizarre view of nurses and medical professionals, he decided to enroll at Mountainside Hospital's nursing school in Montclair, New Jersey. He was president of his nursing class. He graduated in 1986 and started working in the burn unit of St. Barnabas Medical Center in Livingston, New Jersey. While there, he met and married Adrienne Taub in 1987, and they ended up having 2 daughters together. However, it wasn't the greatest of marriages. Adrienne became quite scared of Charles over the years. She claimed that he abused and killed several family dogs. He had put lighter fluid into people's drinks when he was angry with them, and so she became more and more fearful of her life, and they ended up divorcing in 1993. Even though Cullen has legitimately denied these charges even to this day. Even before his divorce, strange things were going on at St. Barnabas. Unexplained patient deaths. In fact, when he would later confess, one of the first murders he would confess to occurred on June 11th, 1988, where he administered a lethal dose of an unknown medication, and later on he confessed it was insulin to an AIDS patient at St. Barnabas. Several deaths there. I mean, Charles Cullen was convicted of 40 deaths, but it is believed, and he has confirmed that he could well be responsible for over 400 deaths. But basically, his modus operandi was to inject them with insulin or digoxin, which is a heart medication, and basically kill them that way. And his modus operandi was to contaminate IV bags or to inject the patient directly. But every single hospital, he started at St. Barnabas and would end later at Somerset, but from those 2 hospitals and everything in between, they always covered this up. They noticed that there was some strange inventory issues with the medication because you have to sign medicine out. You can't just take it. So they all had issues with missing IV bags, tampered IV bags, and missing medication from their inventories. But none of them really addressed it. They wouldn't. He was fired several times, which means they suspected him, but none of these hospitals, for fear of legal ramifications from the patients of his victims, would actually call the authorities and have him arrested. They would simply fire him, seal the records, and go on with their life, which enabled him to move from hospital to hospital in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area quite easily and just get another job and continue his murderous ways. And this is not the first time that hospitals have been found guilty of this. Google killer nurses. There are so many cases of killer nurses and killer doctors, particularly in the West Coast. I don't know why. This is the East Coast, but there's a lot of them in like Oregon, Washington State. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the weather. But a lot of them, and a lot of hospitals cover this up for fear of legal ramifications. They'll fire them, they'll get rid of them, but very rarely do they ever send them to authorities, which, we need to be able to trust our medical professionals, which is why get second opinions. Be diligent, particularly if you're dealing with somebody that is not old enough or is, not in does not have their mental facilities to be able to make decisions from themselves. Please make sure that you're making educated decisions. Get second opinions if you're not sure, because this stuff does happen, rarely now, but it does happen. So now we're going to fast forward to 2002, but in between 1988 and 2002, he's worked at about 4 other hospitals and 1 nursing home, and all of them had the same outcome. He would be fired when unusual things started to happen, and he would be given neutral recommendations which would allow him to get another job. So we're going to fast forward to September of 2002, where he started working in a critical care unit of Somerset Medical Center in Somerville, New Jersey. he started dating a local woman who would eventually break up with him because first of all, he attempted suicide a couple of times and would end up stalking her. So lots of different stuff happened. June 18th, 2003, he unsuccessfully attempted to murder a patient at Somerset by the name of Philip Gregor. He was later discharged and died 6 months later of natural causes. And so Somerset began to take more notice of Cullen's wrongdoing than any of the other. And eventually, they started to basically watch him and have other patients watch him. But because he had been associated with at least 10 unusual deaths at Somerset, finally, New Jersey Poison Information and Control Center took notice of what was happening and basically sent officers from the local law enforcement to investigate it. And this is kind of where the events of the movie The Good Nurse pick up. Basically, it's a battle between law enforcement and the hospital administration because they feel he's an actual murderer, possibly a serial killer, based on information. When they started looking into his past, they noticed, all the hospitals he had been at, there had been an unusual spike in patient deaths at all of them. And so they feel they have a serial killer on their hands. But of course, the administration of the hospital doesn't want to let that be known. And so they do eventually fire him, but they fire him for lying on his application that he put the wrong dates of employment at his last job. And during that time, he tried to kill 5 more people. So he was dismissed from the hospital for neutral reasons. But it was during this time he had come to know Nurse Amy Logren. She had a heart condition that she was trying to keep from the hospital so that she could have health insurance, and he would help her on shift to do a lot of the heavy lifting. They became friends. He would babysit her 2 daughters. And so after he was fired, he immediately was able to go out and get another job. Amy had discussions with other people at other hospitals that he had worked and realized, my friend Charles is probably a killer. So she started wearing wires and having conversations with him. And finally, the information that she was able to cull out of him, because she seemed to have a calming effect on Cullen, he would just let it flow. And so because of what she was able to get on wires, the police were able to arrest him December 12th, 2003. And then on December 14th, 2 days later, he admitted to many of the murders, confessed to many of them. He said he could not remember how many people he had killed. He always used the excuse that he was trying to prevent them from having a more painful death, that it was a mercy killing, though medical records will show that many of his victims, the 40 that he was actually convicted of, would probably not have died of the ailments that they were in there for. So his whole thing about a mercy killing was just kind of buckus. This is a psychotic serial killer, though he may have a more calm demeanor. He is a psychotic serial killer. And he was eventually sentenced March 2nd, 2006 to 11 consecutive life sentences by a New Jersey Superior Court. He is not eligible for parole until the year 2388. I'm sure he will have shuffled off this mortal coil long before that. And so that is the true life of Charles Cullen. Now let's talk about the movie The Good Nurse. The Good Nurse is a 2022 drama movie. It's about 2 hours in length that was released on Netflix in November of 2022. It is based on the 2013 true crime novel about the Charles Cullen murders by American journalist Charles Graeber. Now, Graeber was able to get permission to visit Cullen, who was pretty much silent after his trial. He supposedly had not spoken a word in years, but yet he would talk to this journalist. And so they were able to talk and actually strike up kind of a pseudo friendship as he kind of relayed to him about his life and all of his murders. Many of them, he said he couldn't remember their names or when it happened. He could only give approximations, but it is guessed, even though he was convicted of around 40, that he was responsible for over 400. So that is the book that the movie The Good Nurse is based on. It stars Jessica Chastain as the Good Nurse. The Good Nurse is referencing to Amy Logdren, who is the hero of this entire situation, and stars Eddie Redmayne, who plays Charles Cullen with a haunting authenticity. I mean, he's just wow. In fact, the real life Good Nurse, Amy, she said that she's only seen the movie once and will probably not see it again, not because it's not excellent, but because she so much saw Charles Cullen in Redmayne's performance that it brought back way too much destructive memories for her. But basically, it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival September 11th, 2022. Was released for a short run in theaters in October, and then released the last week of October, first week of November on Netflix. It is very accurate to the actual life of Charles Cullen, the events at Somerset Hospital, which were kind of the unraveling of the whole Cullen case, and it is excellent. It really is an excellent movie. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat. It's definitely an old school true crime thriller. So I highly, highly recommend The Good Nurse if you want to get an accurate representation of the life of a serial killer. Very, very good. And it's unique in that most serial killer movies kind of go at it from the criminal's perspective. It's the life of the criminal. This isn't it. It's the life of the hero and her situation and why she did what she did. So excellent, very well done, and it'll keep you on the edge of your seat. I was thoroughly, thoroughly entertained, and that's what a movie should do. And so, with that being said, I'm going to sign off for now. I'll be back tomorrow night with talking about Casey Anthony and the docuseries over on Peacock. And with that being said, until next time, keto and cry.